comprehensive document and institution of the Commissioner has, and Ms. Yankovic herself has obviously invested a lot of effort and knowledge, and we'd like to congratulate them and thank you. And the image that is presented by the report is not something we can be proud of. We are the community that like to think about ourselves, that we like to think that we are solid, that we take care of the elderest. Unfortunately, Serbia is not immune to the trends in the whole world. And I'm here referring to the aging of the general population, particularly in the rural areas, and their material social position, which is very often very bad. Particularly concerning the data from the report about the complaints related to discrimination based on age, and they have been ranked among the top reasons for discrimination, and people expect protection of the whole society and the Commissioner. For years now, these complaints about discrimination are ranked second as compared to other forms of the discrimination. This is the situation we need to change. This is why it's important we have such a detailed, comprehensive, in-depth report. It's a good material to make informed decisions that will really, on long-term basis, improve the position of the older people. I'm sure that during this discussion we can emphasize the numerous positive things that have been recorded in this report. I'm here referring to the efforts of this and previous governments to improve the material position of the pensioners by constantly improving the pensions, and it has been the case for years now. We have to take into consideration that every fifth citizen of our country is over the age of 65, and there is increased care for improving their material position. It is one of the top financial and social priorities of the government. We are sure that by increasing their material and financial position of our pensioners is something that through which we eliminate the majority of the factors that cause their discrimination and in general their undeserved marginalized position in the society. We would like Serbia where it's not a shame to be old, where being a pensioner does not mean being poor and discriminated. I'm sure that we are on a good path to do this, and we all share the feeling of solidarity. This is why this report is very important, having in mind all their recommendations and everything. I'm just thinking about how old are these people we are talking about. The Commissioner says, well, over the age of 65. He says, well, okay, I'm 55, but I'm very close to this age. I'd like to thank you all for being here. I would particularly like to thank the Commissioner and her team, and thank you for drafting this document, and hopefully during this public hearing we will also have ideas about some concrete initiatives that we can implement together, and the better the position and the smaller the scale of discrimination, then the better position of our older citizens is. And we would like to help you as much as we can as a National Assembly. Thank you. I'm here to moderate, and I'd like to address distinguished members of Parliament, distinguished Minister Chomic. We are also expecting Minister Tepavčević. I'd like to greet State Secretaries, Your Excellency, Mr. Fabrizi, Madam Jacob, partners from the UN agencies, dear partners from the civil society organizations and the media, distinguished guests. Almost 1 billion people in the world are over the age of 60. And in less than half a century, for the first time in history, the older people will outnumber those who are under the age of 15. In Europe, every fifth citizen is over the age of 65. The Republic of Serbia shares the destiny of Europe and the world, both with regard to the demographic structure. So today, we are talking about future of Serbia, and I'd say about the future of Europe. And of course, we are talking about our present the way it is, because we are real, we are serious. There is an increasing number of those who are over the age of 80, which is good. It indicates that the lifespan in our country is extending, which is the greatest achievement primarily of science. There is almost twice as much older women, but in the general number of population, there is 180,000 more women. We have about 560,000 widowers women and about 150,000 widower men widowers. This is a data that we can discuss later on. Now it's not the time, but I'm familiar with this topic. Also, President mentioned that the trend of depopulation is very much emphasized, particularly we see in some parts of the country where the three generations live under the same roof, where young people are deciding to come back to the villages, and the process of digitalization, development of technology is good for this. These data are telling us that there are numerous challenges of the aging, and we need to act efficiently, all of us as competent institutions, in order to build up society tailored for all generations. Let me emphasize that during the work of this institution, the age has been ranked among the first three grounds of the complaints submitted to this institution. Of course, the position of the older people is complex. In many segments, it's not favorable. We should particularly bear in mind contemporary social values that favorize speed, looks, terror of the youth, constant changes, instant solutions in many aspects of the life. In reality, many older people live in poverty, or they're at risk of becoming poor, according to the data of the progress report on implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. The poverty risk rate was reducing and indicated there is mild progress in all age categories, except with those who are over 65 years of age. It has been moderate. Some elderly people are exposed to abuse, harassment, disrespect, neglect, marginalization, self-neglect, and they have many of them suffer from dementia, cognitive disorders that are not understood well. They are not fast enough because they grew up in another different time. Smartphone is not just a matter of routine where 2 clicks to success is something they're used to. For all these reasons, and for the reasons that institution that I run must not just be observer of the situation, but it must be a proactive, credible partner to all state institutions, organizations of civil society, whose priority goal is to build up an open, tolerant society in which government, in which actually the human rights and rule of law are respected, and with the support of the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, we have done this special report on aging, and I'd like to thank our partners for this. I'd like to thank also the Speaker of the National Assembly for giving us opportunity to speak about this topic at this supreme body, because this topic is something that needs to be discussed in such a body, important body. Hopefully you will accept the initiative of the Commissioner to establish in this National Assembly a special committee for the issues of aging, and perhaps a subcommittee within another existing committee that would deal with aging issues. I'd like to thank members of parliament, ministers, state secretaries, the government, because you being present here actually proved that this topic is very important, and having in mind the health crisis, the ongoing health crisis, we see that the older population has been disproportionately more affected by it. I believe that I have the right to say that this is one of the most important topics, because I'm talking about all of us. All of us sooner or later will become member of this older age population. President will be a member of this older age population sooner than the others, and he says, well, this is a discrimination. I'm joking, of course, and I have sometimes been criticized for putting a special focus on the protection of the human rights of the elderly, because I insist on preventing the discrimination of the elderly, because some claim that some other groups are more discriminated. I am glad to hear the criticism and praise as well. I believe it is with good reason that we have good reasons to speak about the discrimination, ageism, because this group of population will or already includes all population groups, minorities, LGBTs, persons with disability, and all of us. If racism and anti-Semitism were dominant form of discrimination in the previous work, I believe that ageism could become the most present form of discrimination in the 21st century. But it could become the most present form of discrimination, but it all depends on our approach to aging. This is why we are here today, to act together to prevent such a scenario in the future. The report that you have before you is actually a contribution of the Commissioner to preventing such results in future. Let me declare and remind you, ageism are stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination based on age. And the term itself was made by Dr. gerontologist Robert Butler as a warning about the forthcoming negative trend when it comes to aging all over Europe. The most important image that we have in the public when it comes to the statistical data about the older people is that situation is alarming, daunting. We are dying out. There are less of us and more of the older people, and older people are gullible, they are lonely, they are prone to, they could be subjected to violence and fraud and cheating. And actually, the final, it boils down to there are more and more older people there, and they're expensive. Well, we need to change this image because the report before you is a contribution to the extensive social undertaking. It is our obligation towards the younger generation as well. We don't want them to believe their future is pointless. We as a society have a great upper hand thanks to our cultural identity, good tradition, customs from the past that entail respect of the older people and solidarity and understanding. And if we preserve this and improve it in the forthcoming years, then it's good. The intergenerational cooperation and exchange is very important. We need to make informal ways to transfer our knowledge, experience between the generation. It is this Generation solidarity is a founding social agreement, and it is something that our system of pension and invalidity insurance is based on. Our older people, until yesterday, paid contributions. Today, it's our turn to pay contributions, and tomorrow it will be our children's. I'm sure that members of parliament will, approach this topic with due attention, and it will be important for them to be informed when they make decisions, because I believe that all the social actors, many of us are here, dear panelists, we must find useful information, ideas. and I'd like to thank you all, because old age is a certain future for all of us. I have to say that the practice here is that I open and moderate the meetings. Although the Commissioner has discriminated me here, I just like to thank you for being here, but I need to leave you right now for the moment. And I'd like to ask the head of the EU delegation, Mr. Sam Fabrizi, to address us, and I'd like to thank him. I'd like to thank the EU delegation in Serbia and to the EU in general for a continuous and honest support. We have been receiving support for improvement of equality and protection of the citizens against discrimination. We know that at the EU level, this is one of the most important topics as well. You've heard that the demographic structure in Europe is very similar to our country. Thank you very much, Mr. Fabrizi, for being here with us today. And once again, I'd like to thank our Minister, Daria Tepavcevic, for being here today. Mr. Fabrizi, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, dear Commissioner, dear Brankica. It's a pleasure to be here in Skupština together with the ministers and colleagues from the UN and the most distinguished guests into the room. I think this is a very important topic that concerns all of us, and certainly the starting point is what role for the elder people we want to see in a society. And certainly the first reflection should be how we can treasure their role as a reservoir of knowledge, of talent, or experience, but also how we can see the elder people also as a contributor to life and the society. In 2009, for example, 2019, the Nobel Prize for Chemistry was won by a 97-year-old old scientist, John Goodenough, or Teresa Bernstein, who was a famous Polish painter and artist, made her exhibition when she was 110. So this might be in just a few cases, but the point is that how we can transform the elder population from being an object of compassion sometimes and also of a discrimination group, how we can transform them in a active part of the society. The demographic tell us the crude reality of the number. If you look at the EU, already 20% of the population of the EU is over 65, and by 2070, so in 50 years' time, is projected to be 30%. So nearly one out of 3 citizens will be over 65. In this category, already we expected by 2070 that the percentage of those who will be above 80% will double to arrive to 13% of the EU population. In parallel with this, we also expect that the long-term care to older people will increase from the 19.5 million seniors today to 35.5 million people in 2050. So the demography aging is clearly linked to demography. And for us, the question of how the impact of demographic change will be in the EU has become a key point. The European Commission has been very active on this. And in June 2020, last year, put forward the last report on the impact on demography, on demographic change on the EU. The report is public. I draw the attention for all of you who are interested. But the question is that this report helped to identify concrete action and solution, also taking the lesson of the COVID-19 and how the COVID-19 has impacted severely, unfortunately, especially on the old population. The response of the preliminary takeout from the Commission demographic report is that there is not a one-fits-all approach. each member state within the European Union has its own demographic reality to look at, but certainly as a union we have a common and shared interest to responding to this demographic change to the benefit of the European Union. And based on this report, demographic report, the Commission has published in January this year a green paper on aging, which gave us a little bit of what can be done at the level of the European Union to address these issues. It's clear also that the measures that need to be taken are encompassing a wider element of issues. The question of health and the question of the health system is the question of education and lifelong education, is the question of how to bring more people for a longer period of time in the workforce, is the question of welfare in general. In the EU, still valid, I think the three numbers was put forward a few years ago, 7, 25, and 50. The EU is nearly 7% of the world population, as 25% of GDP, of the world global GDP is in the EU, and also has the 50% of the social spending, nearly the welfare, in the EU. So if you align the 7, 25, and 50, is a big challenge in the EU, how is such a small workforce can produce still a quarter of the welfare of the wealth of the world, and can sustain 50% of the global spending. So for us, it's also a question of sustainability of a social and economic approach. But certainly from the green paper that the Commission put forward early this year, the question for us is more a life cycle approach as we look demographic and aging, and how we can find the right balance between welfare system and intergenerational solidarity. As from what the speaker and what the Commissioner just said, aging is a reality also for Serbia, one of the oldest population in Europe in terms of demography. There's the question of the role of the elder people, how the elder people live, how the caring from the families, from the communities are being dealt with. The question of discrimination or not is certainly is question for debate. Until 2015, Serbia has a strategy on aging, gave a number of indications. I think it's important that a debate starts again or continues again in Serbia on how to address these issues and how we can transform aging in active aging to help this category of people to be active part of the society. The EU has been working with the Serbian institution in many occasions. We look also at the aging, decent aging also as a fundamental rights. We are still running a number of projects with different stakeholders. We work with the Association of Citizen Amity. We work with Red Cross Serbia and another institution. And I think it's very important that the Commissioner, with this report, bring back to the debate that there's these important issues. And I hope that certainly from this debate, some ideas can be generated on how to bring demography, aging at the center of the debate, how solution can be found. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fabrizi. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot for this very comprehensive speech. By reminding us of the example of the Nobel Prize winner, you have reminded all of us that some people, many of them are present here, have actually made their best pieces of work in the older period of their life, in the period of the life when they were older. And when it comes to the Green Paper on Aging, it's the latest document of EU policy document, and we as a candidate EU member state is following it, and we are aligning our practices and policies with the EU policies, including the policies on aging. Before I give the word to Madam Françoise Jacob, the resident coordinator of the UN in Serbia, we'll see the video message of the regional UNFP director for EECA, Alana Armitage.
Mr. Speaker of Parliament, Commissioner Brankica Jankovic, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. UNFPA congratulates you on this important event in the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia, dedicated to the situation and rights of older persons. The special report on aging and the roadmap for healthy and active aging that will be presented today represents a critical milestone and a vision for the country and the region as a whole. Europe is the region with the world's largest proportion of older persons. For UNFPA, Serbia has become a champion on addressing demographic change, including population aging. The National Assembly and you as members of the National Parliament play a pivotal role in finding the solutions to the challenges associated with population aging, which need to be nurtured at the local level among the communities that you represent. And I'm particularly pleased that today's event will initiate a dialogue on aging that will remain part of the Parliament's agenda in its future official business. Our joint participation in this discussion today demonstrates a cross-sectoral, multi-partner and multi-country approach that is needed for understanding and addressing population aging in all its complexities. With this in mind, and in light of the impact of COVID-19 on older persons, UNFPA coordinated the development of a regional joint program on aging, upholding the rights and dignity of older persons through health, social care, and enabling environments in Europe and Central Asia, together with WHO, UNECE, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and Help Age International. The aim of our initiative is to support the countries in Europe and Central Asia to implement programs on aging in a comprehensive manner and with active participation of older persons themselves. The special report on aging in the Republic of Serbia that will be presented today is consistent with the vision of our joint UN regional program, as well as the European vision elaborated in the report on the impact of demographic change in Europe published last year by the EU's Vice President for Democracy and Demography, and its Green Paper on Aging published earlier this year. Later this year, we will convene a high-level regional conference dedicated to demographic resilience, and we will be pleased to showcase the excellent work on aging being done in the Republic of Serbia. I reiterate my congratulations, and we look forward to our continued partnership to achieve a society for all ages. Thank you.
I'd like you to thank Madam Armitage and Madam Jacob. The floor is yours. Thank you for being here today with us. Thank you, Commissioner. Your Excellencies, members of the Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I'd like to congratulate the Madam Commissioner, Brankica Jankovic, and for her team for this special report on on aging. And I'd like to thank the Parliament for organizing this event. And now I'll switch to English. Although in other way, my speech would last very long.
Was reminded last year of the multiple vulnerabilities of our elders who were the most affected by the pandemic, both in their physical health and in their mental health. And each of us in this room, as was said before, will face one after, I was speaking to my mom on the phone. She's 90-year-old, and she told me today, I want to go to her home to live well. So please work more and work faster on these issues. So we heard the world is undergoing a huge age shift. I will not repeat the numbers, but you know, in the UN we work on this Agenda 2030 with the country, and we have estimated that in countries by 2030, the number of people above 65 will have increased by 20%, while the number of children between 0 to 14 will have decreased by 5%. In Serbia, I think it was said, but people above 65-year-old are already accounting for 21% of the population. So in the wake of the pandemic, in December last year, in December 2020, the United Nations General Assembly, so that includes, of course, Serbia, declared 2021 to 2030 the decade of healthy aging, which I think translates into deceniju zdravog starenja. The UN resolution, there is a resolution, states that the world is not sufficiently prepared to respond to the rights and the needs of older people, despite the predictability of population aging and despite the accelerating pace. The resolution acknowledged that the aging of the population impact, of course, the health system, but many other aspects of society, and some of them were already touched upon, including labor and financial markets, the demand for very specific goods and services, such as housing, long-term care, lifelong education, social protection, and of course, information. So this meeting in Serbia is extremely, extremely timely. And I was just reading yesterday that in my country, France, these discussions are actually taking place now as well. My second point is on the fact that older people are not a homogeneous group, and there is not one solution that fits for all, as Ambassador Fabrizi has also mentioned. The differences exist in terms of the occupation of the old people, their multiple roles in the society, their health and mental status, their income and financial means, their access to services, their isolation from or integration in social networks, their life in urban or in rural context, their ability to embrace digitalization or not, which is a huge issue right now, their gender, etc. So the report from the Commissioner provides really a detailed overview of all this difference, and I believe for the first time we have access to evidence that will help all of us together to develop and shape new solutions. These solutions, as much as possible, should allow elders to stay in their home and in their communities. This is really the big focus now everywhere. Stay in their home and their communities, to have a healthy and independent lifestyle. Most importantly, of course, future actions should address violence, abuse, discrimination, or neglect, including self-neglect. I think this is a really important point, self-neglect, tiredness and self-neglect against older people, or by older people. And most importantly also, these actions should reduce the gap between the richest and the poorest people in a disability-free life. And my last point is about the need to have a coordinated approach between the multiple stakeholders, the institutions, national, local level, and I understand there will be a special discussion on that today. Such cross-sector collaboration includes businesses and the voluntary sector, the civil society, and I'm happy to know that there are a representative of the civil society today. We need to work together to find innovative solutions with both economic and social benefits. Dealing with aging also includes breaking stereotype, and we at the UN, we will continue to promote this extensive intergenerational approach, bringing the old and the young together, developing new skills in the care industry and valuing these new jobs. I think it's going to be a massive opportunity for new jobs, promoting healthy lifestyle and ensuring a voice for all. The UN in Serbia, we support this approach, and several agencies like the UN Population Fund Agency are already actively involved. In our engagement with the government for the next 5 years, 21 to 25, we have included the development of human capital and well-being across generation as one of 3 strategic priorities with green transformation and the rule of law and governance agenda. So it's really our hope that a national aging strategy and this intergenerational approach will be reflected in Serbia's future Sustainable Development Plan. I really hope this event today will galvanize our action together with empathy and a sense of urgency. Hvala.
Hvala puno, uvažena gospođo Jacob.
Thank you, Madam Jacob. The message of your mom will definitely be included in the conclusions. It's very picturesque. Thank you for reminding us about the heterogeneity and not homogeneity of this group, and for emphasizing the need for preventing digital exclusion of the older generation, because we want to prevent digital discrimination. And thank you for emphasizing the need for multi-sectoral approach, because none of us on its own could tackle these issues. We need to act together. Before my colleague Tatjana Prijić presents the most important data from the report before the minister panel, I'd like to thank my colleagues in the team, without whom this report would not be possible. We envisaged to have a video message of the President of the Republic, but because he is very much committed to these issues, but we've had some technical issues, and we agreed not to show this, not to record this video message. I was asked to say on behalf of the President that he greets this meeting today and people present here, and to say that one of the greatest priority of our country is the position of the older people, and he wants to thank us for speaking about it. I will read just one sentence from his video message, saying that our older deserve respect, and more than respect, and the Republic of Serbia has proved to take care about the older people, about their dignity. There is a lot that is yet to organize. Very soon, a big event dedicated to this topic. It will be, you know, this is why I won't read his message instead of a message. I just mentioned some of the things, but it's very important for us that we actually have a full support and interest of all relevant political and social stakeholders when it comes to the implementation of the active and dignified aging that are tailored of the report. I will join her, present the recommendations, and then we'll hear from the ministers about future plans. Thank you. Read.
These identiteta, poštovanja.
Position. The report itself contains, I'm sorry for, it contains a few chapters. Where, here you have the overview of the position of elderly with demographic data, with the projections for the future, a normative framework, a domestic framework of legislative acts. Then the surveys, practice of the commissioner according to years, and the recommendations to overcome the problems. Concerning the demographic image, the demographic aging is a global characteristic, and it has important implications on the pensions and the disability fund. According to some available data, the Republic of Serbia in 2019 was the 88th country in Europe according to the number of elderly people, and in the world. In the last census in 2018, 160 local administration have communities have negative population growth, and it means that one small town of 30,000 people will disappear yearly. So the larger participation of youth is present. So the bigger number of old people in villages and much more old women present. The graphics represent the projection of the developments in Serbia, and you can see that the upper lines shows the number of those over 80 years of age and increase of the number of old women. We are here in the National Assembly, which passes laws, and it's not necessary to look back on the to mention the legislative framework. I just want to mention that at the UN level, in the last 10 years, polemics have been led on the necessity of passing a new convention concerning the situation of old people. Concerning the exercise of rights of the old people, here are the most important data. Number of members of the pension fund was 2,800,000, and then it fell progressively to 2 million people. So the using of those that right to pensions been extended. The problem is not the number of beneficiaries, but the percentage of the people who pay in that pension fund. So having in mind the growth of employment and the increase of unemployment, so all that should be taken in mind. 40% of the beneficiaries has pension up to 20,000 dinars, and that also indicates the slow growth of the poverty rate. This is not the characteristic of our country only, but this is also the characteristic of EU countries. The poverty growth is the significant mark of this situation. So the years of using the right to pension has been increasing. The increase of beneficiaries using the services of institutional housing from 2015 to 2018 has increased by 60%. Still, 0.8% of population is belonging to institutional housing users. So the number of the using housekeeping services has doubled in the last few years. So 1.2% of the overall population over 6 years of age is user of the housekeepers service, but that service has not been offered continuously. It's been offered in 50% of the in local communities. All these data speak about the need for larger and stronger support from society. Here we can find discrimination present, abuse, and we should also point out discrimination is very dangerous phenomenon that does not discriminate, make a difference between social groups. Special state authority is like Commissioner for Equality is engaged in action against, according to complaints, and engagement in strategic litigations and representation and other activities in case when discrimination is present as a negative phenomenon. So the bridge of understanding between generations is very much needed and present. It is present for in cooperation with primary schools in literary circles and works, and in painting classes, which include older people that are represented in the pictures. The practice says that discrimination according to age is the second rating in the last 5 years, just lagging behind disability. Of overall complaints failed for the discrimination on the basis of age, it's the majority towards concerning the people older than 65. Ageism is the coined term concerning this discrimination. Old age has negative connotation, and it refers to the fewer turning of elderly people to the authorities in cases of their abuse of rights. So discrimination concerns their age, health, and it manifests in many areas in their position and requiring their rights before the authorities concerning issues of pension and disability fund users. The practice of the commissioner shows the heterogeneity of this social group and the necessity for the assistance, especially of those who are elderly and who are over 80, and those who live in remote and difficult to access places, and who live alone, and who have lesser financial means. The Commissioner for Equality has, during the last year, act in different ways. The reports give the list of many examples. I'll give some of them. The recommendation has been given to remove the user age limit for using the bank accounts. The pensioner, the old age hospitals should also consider different conditions for old people to provide social protection assistance services in long term, and to provide better healthcare services, and also to have equal distribution of these services in Serbia, to provide medical and medicines and all healthcare material for the elder, to have marketing contents free from the insinuation of all elderly position. Concerning the commissioner, the last year indicated very much about the need to introduce balance between the position of elderly and the economic and social disturbances caused by COVID-19. Only during the state of emergency, the Commissioner of Equality had many recommendations, over 300, and some 12 complaints about the state of emergency were deliberated on. So we recommended offering information over phone and offering also healthcare services to old people, not just those who are seriously ill. And we also recommended included engagement of volunteers. So we surveyed the position of old people together with the Red Cross of Serbia from 2015 to 2019. There were many surveys conducted. The last survey conducted, which is in special report, which was conducted with the support of the UNFPA, gives all the data that we found. I'll mention some of them. Over 80% of the those who were surveyed and include people older than 65, has said that they did not use services of supportive assistance, and that means do not mean no help like house cleaning and so on. The largest problems in the healthcare is the too long waiting for specialist checks and remoteness of healthcare institutions, and majority of them think that they are not on equal footing with the rest of the population. That should be corrected through educational system. And there are data that 80% use smartphones, and they also express wish for some tutorials and some instructions for using digital means. These are just the most interesting parts of the special report on aging, but by looking into the overall practice and experience of the commissioner, we have given also the recommendations, and Brankica Janković will present them. Thank you, Tanja.
I will speak a bit faster about recommendation because I have opportunity to speak about it in the conclusions, because Minister Tomic and Mr. Tepavčević need to hurry. They have a lot of obligations. So the first recommendation is related to the social security, and of course it's very important to have the measures for reducing poverty and the measures for ensuring support, financial support to aging through the reform of the pension system and the social care system, by stimulating flexible forms of labor where participation in the labor market would increase in line with the abilities and wishes of the elderly. The drafting of this strategic, we have agreed that it is necessary to have a national strategy on aging. The name of it is less important, but I know here by speaking to to the Minister Tepavčević and Minister Dmitrović and the Minister of Health, and with Minister Tomic, we have all agreed that we need this national strategy. They're ready for it. I'm not going to elaborate on this because you know that we need to be involved in drafting this document. Recommendations also refer to the of new regulations in line with international standards, particularly related to the workabilities. This in the procedure. They taught us a lot about we have had a lot of crises, and that's why it's necessary to have clear, applicable procedures in all the phases of the crisis that are based on quality and disaggregated data based on the experience of this crisis. We need to have a good approach based on adequate, timely information in order to overcome the crisis. Promotion of voluntarism, promotion of voluntary work, and facilitating the procedures for someone to become a volunteer would be very important, because these procedures are complicated. Speaking about social protection, I believe that the State Secretary will tell us more about it, and we'll speak about the master plan, because this plan is actually will contribute to the implementation of the recommendation, because it will enable availability of some mobility services to the elderly, like various services, but particularly they should be available to the rural population. And we should increase the awareness about the health risk among the elderly. You see how many of them we have. Particular attention should be paid to men. You could see dramatic, difference between the numbers of men and women that belong to the older population. And also we should ensure healthcare measures. Of course, we need to have equal approach of all of them should have equal approach to the health care for older people. We need to, in timely manner, activate all the forms of support to the elderly. It is also necessary to have better connection between, the funds that are invested and how to follow and assess the quality of the social care. Of course, we need to provide support at the local level. We need to take into consideration the particularly vulnerable group when it comes to dementia. We should increase further development of innovative services like temporary accommodation and similar. Through our experience, through complaints, we have seen that we need to have some support to service providers. We need to improve position and capacities of informal caregivers. Madam Minister will speak about it later on. We all agree that we'll need most efforts to be invested in preservation of mental health when it comes to this crisis. And of course, we need to ensure appropriate capacity and quality of the services of institutional accommodation. The next recommendation is related to the prevention of discrimination and violence, because we all really have the opportunity to together in coordinated manner and efficiently act within the system to eliminate the prejudice and stereotypes about the roles and contribution of the elderly in the community. We should pay due attention to the media responsible reporting, and that they should not publish unallowed media contents. They should promote the culture of tolerance, understanding, intergenerational solidarity, non-discrimination. I spoke about this more in the beginning, so I won't go into details. And of course, in the end, we need to take care that elderly have the need to be socially included. You could see the results of the research. A lot of them, about 60%, do not feel equal. They feel excluded. There are many of them who are ready to be included, that want to learn, but we somehow neglect their need. There is no dilemma that we need to intensify the work on removing all types of barriers, not just architectural barriers and obstacles when it comes to accessibility, but also to promote intergenerational dialogue, to exchange of knowledge. We'll have example later on. Then to promote lifelong learning and inclusion of increasing number of the elderly people into various tailor-made training courses, because they need to be in line with their wishes, because sometimes they say, okay, they have the wish to learn, but the training course needs to be adjusted to them. It cannot include, clicks on the computer, because, this is for younger generations, and some of them, perhaps this is banal, but some of them cannot use some training because they are not adjusted to them, and they feel, that their dignity is jeopardized. So we need to have tailor-made training for all of us. And one of our recommendations is to adopt an action plan to see how we can enable the elderly to use contemporary IT devices. And I spoke about this with Madam Djukic-Dejanovic to see how we can do it together. And here I want to finish about recommendations. I'm sorry that I was talking perhaps very quickly. We'll speak about it later on, but this is an opportunity for me to invite the Chairman of the Committee on Human Minority Rights, Mr. Muammer Bacevec. I'd like to thank him for providing us with full support and understanding when it comes to these topics. And I'd like to thank you for being truly committed to the protection of human rights, including the elderly people. And he will moderate this panel one, Minister panel, where the Minister for Human Minority Rights and Social Dialogue is present. She will just replace the seats. Madam Tomic asked to be first, to speak first. Thank you for coming here. Thank you, Madam Tomic, for admitting that human rights of the elderly are equally important to human rights of the others. It's not easy to have the role of the ministry when it comes to these topics. No one wants to sit here where the Speaker of the National Assembly is sitting.
Samo krenula da onda sam rekla da vi pozovete, ali evo gospodin Zoran Radovanović.
Mr. Zoran Radovanović, he is the State Secretary in the Ministry of Health instead of Minister Zlatibor Lončar, and instead of Minister Ratko Mitrović, who has not recovered from COVID yet. And so Madam Milovanović, State Secretary, will join us. She'll be here instead of the Minister.
Jankovic, esteemed members of the government, and esteemed honorable MPs, honorable representatives of international organizations, representatives of NGOs, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to be able in front of the Committee on Human and Minority Rights and Gender Equality of the National Assembly. I'd like to tell you that this committee deals with the protection of vulnerable groups. And first of all, these are the elderly citizens of Serbia. And therefore, it is important for us that before us, we've got this document dealing with the position of the elderly and their problems and challenges they face and the measures that should be undertaken in order to provide their equal position in society, Serbia. Having in mind the supervisional and the representational function of the National Assembly, then in order to better understand the problems our citizens are faced with, and in order to follow the acting of the reliable authorities, it's very important to cooperate with the government and the Office of the Commissioner for Equality, because it pays a lot of attention to it. The complaint concerning the treatment of their age is the second most frequent of complaints filed to the Commissioner. It's very much worrying concerning issue, because we as a country are very much dedicated, committed to our elderly. And being an MP coming from the Serbia proper, those data we hear that make us very much perplexed. We are very much surprised by statistic is really cruel. And in this report, it's been stated that this is perhaps not the real image of the real situation, because the older people recognize the discrimination, abuse, and do not report it. So the age as a basis of discrimination happens together, followed by some other characteristics, personal characteristics like disability and so on. And also the presence of negative stereotypes about age is also present. And so this is the most drastic form of the violence of human rights towards elderly people. And there are also situations of violence, domestic violence, because elderly people live alone and are dependent on outside assistance. So the process of demographic aging increase is present, and this also pertains to the pension and disability fund increase. So our response should be adequate, and we need to pay a great attention and cooperate with the pension and disability fund institutions. And we also should include employment and protection of rights. So the role of the Commissioner of Equality is to coordinate the cooperation of all the stakeholders mentioned necessary in this process in order to have comprehensive approach, taking care of the needs of the different social groups and especially the elderly. So Commissioner gives the recommendation concerning the aspect of the position of the elderly, and he also underlines the necessity of passing different laws. So there is a strategy on aging. In 2015, we have completed the work, so it's of crucial importance. The state has done a lot in order to improve the position of the elderly, and our aim is to reach the raise of awareness and change the positions of the people, to improve the using of the capacity of the elderly as a group. Once again, I'd like to reiterate this, the words of Ivica Dačić, which is beautiful and it's crucial. He said that aging should not be something shameful, and our pensioners should not be poorer and ashamed. So this is the task we have to deal with very seriously. It's a great pleasure for me that we have the many eminent representatives of the government from ministry and so on. Thank you very much for you for coming. I'll just extend this thanks to Darija Kisić-Tepavčević, Minister of Labor and Social Issues, and veteran, and then I'll also mention another minister whose work is very important. This is Gordana Čomić. I also extend my to my colleague Zoran Radovanović, who is a secretary in the Ministry of Health, who is a great teacher. Then the representatives of the Ministry for Family Care and Demography, Milka Milovanović-Minić, and then the country director of UNFPA for Serbia, John Kennedy Masotti. First of all, I'd like to give the floor to Mrs. Darija Kisić-Tepavčević and inform us about the situation in her ministry. I'd like to ask, we'll first change places. Thank you very much. So, Mrs. Čomić will have the floor.
The reason I want to take the floor first is because I have some other obligations. Thanks to the Madam Commissioner, Mr. Bačevac, and my colleague Kisić-Tepavčević, I have the opportunity to speak first. I was, as a child, fortunate enough to grow up with my grandma and grandpa until I was 20. And my grandpa, when he was speaking to his peers, he was very outgoing, sociable type. And his peers would say, "Oh, we are so old." And he would say, "Horses are old, and we have just been here for a long time. So we are people from the moment we breathe in for the first time until the last breath out. We are the people living in this period, and we are our time." And my grandpa has taught me that growing old and aging is a privilege. And let me give you a proof. In our society, where there are many old people who have been here for a long time, have not had this privilege of aging. They live on average 17 years shorter than the others in the society. And speaking to my grandpa, I've learned that I should listen to other wise people. If you spend significant time or seconds with the wise people, you can learn a lot and share your knowledge and experience with the others. And that's the value of all of our citizens who have been for a long time. I don't want to call them older. They are walking libraries, walking sources of experiences. We can learn from them a lot of things we can't learn from the books. My grandpa has taught me to know that the development of a society starts when people living today in this society start planting trees, knowing that they will not enjoy the shade of the trees, but younger generations. That's the beginning of the development. And how to expand life is to see in one society is to enable, we need to, whether society is desirable for everyone depends on whether the most vulnerable wants to live in the society. I include here the elderly, young, the women, children, and so on. That's why I've it's been a pleasure to cooperate with Ms. Brankica Jankovic, and I could see in the recommendations of the report that it is possible to turn this Latin used as start boni et eque. This is a Latin proverb that can be turned into reality. So when it comes to this recommendation, we can read them, but we in the ministry have read them carefully, and we accept each and every one of them, because only by accepting and implementing these recommendations we can, as the Ministry for Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue, enable the conditions so that our Serbia becomes a country where it is more which is more desirable for living. And the purpose is for us to last as long as possible, to have as many of us who have been here for a long time, older of us, and to teach and learn from each other carefully. Let me give you an example of a different type of anecdote. I'm a baby boom generation, and a generation that is now losing parents. Some of us are lucky enough if their parents are still alive. I've met my friend that I grew up with, and I asked him, "How's your mom?" And he said, "Well, she's in the home for elderly people." Well, I said, "I didn't ask you where she was, but how is she?" But he said, "Well, she's there." You know, I said, it's not the answer to my question, you know, and this is why all of us need goodwill, just a little goodwill, and it's necessary for all of us, from the executive, from the local self-governments that are paid from the budget to take care of the people. So we should all meet and make a plan on how to make it that in 2030, through the Sustainable Development Strategy, the son of this friend of mine, when I ask his son how your father is, that he tells me how his father is, and not to tell me where his father is. Well, that should be natural, but it's not happening, you know. So reducing discrimination is something within our competences. We have adopted these recommendations. We should work with other ministries to implement them. Strategic documents are necessary in order to put in them how much can the world live better in Serbia, and local level is very important. So the reason why I'm leaving this meeting earlier is because the Ministry for Human and Minority Rights is actually visiting administrative counties in Serbia, because 85% of the laws are implemented at the local level. We want to remind them that all the laws that are within our competences should be and must be implemented. Brankica refers, her recommendations refer to the local level mostly. So today we are going to South Bački district, and these recommendations should be, this is something that the local government should be informed about and implement them at the local level. And we'll want to tell them that, yes, we are resolved that Serbia can live better together than it has been the case so far. Thank you, Madam Chomic. Thank you. We have just, I just want to remind you that we have just finished the sitting of the Human and Minority Rights Committee sitting, and Minister was present. Today at our committee session, we considered 2 laws that will be on the parliamentary agenda next week. We considered in principle the law on the prevention of discrimination, non-discrimination, and we have a proposal of the law on gender equality. The committee has approved for these laws to be submitted to the plenary. Hopefully we'll have important discussions on these laws. Now I'd like to give the floor to the Minister for Labour, Employment, Social and Veteran Issues. Ms. Daria Kisic-Tepavcic. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is my great pleasure to be here with you today and for participating in this panel organized within the presentation of a special report on aging. And we can see a sentence on the beginning of the title of the this report, where it says, which says, "You will grow old, so have understanding." Well, this is true, but some people see it as a threat, and we are very much prone, for example, in life, when we see a person who is older, in our opinion, very often we tell them, "Oh, you look good for your age," or "You're hanging out good for your age," as if it is expected that these persons do not look good or do not are not feeling well in their age. And aging is a physiological process. It's a progressive physiological process, and the fact is that we are older today than we were yesterday, and tomorrow we'll be older than we are today. But I'd like to agree with Minister Tomic, who said that aging is a privilege as well. We are still living in the times of the pandemic, and when we have witnessed a lot of young people losing their lives, and it's happening every day, not just because of this infectious disease, but unfortunately many young people do not live up to their old age. So really, old age is a privilege of all of those who manage to face and tackle numerous challenges during their lives. Definitely, aging and old age is not the same. I'd like to ask all of you now, what's the definition of an old person? Who is an old person? What would we say? Who is an old person? There are different arbitrary definitions. Are those people who are over 65 years of age or not? Definitions are different. But I heard a wise man saying something, giving a definition, and accepted this definition. He said, an old person is a person who's older than you. So if we accept this definition, then we're young forever. But this is something positive, young in spirit. But we should not, turn our eyes from this physiological process. We should accept this process as a privilege if we are fortunate enough to face the challenges that life brings before us. Aging as a physiological process brings numerous changes, regardless of how much we try to, have some healthy lifestyle or habits. Aging is something that brings physiological changes, functioning of our body is different, and it brings some psychological changes, but also it brings, unfortunately, some social changes, because they depend on the way the society treats the old people. Well, we can affect this part. This is the only part that can be actually changed by all of us. Aging is not happening to an individual, it is happening to the whole society. And often we hear about aging of the population. However, there is a term that is independent of, average age of population. Last year I was surprised when I could see that I am older than the average age of the population. But there is something called life expectancy. And this life expectancy is increasing, and that is the reflection of the modern society, availability of the healthcare services, availability of sanitary and hygiene services, and life. And this is something that we want to be much longer, this life expectancy, despite our, trying to add years to life. We need to add life to years, because the quality of life is something that is essential. And speaking about older population, we have spoken a lot about them in previous, months since the beginning of the pandemic, and we have spoken positively about them as they always show us their examples of how we should, role models of how we should behave in a responsible manner. From the beginning of the isolation and lockdown, we introduced some measures on them, trying to protect them, but through their examples, they showed that they managed, in the majority of cases, to protect from this virus and their most vulnerable category. When we have a look at the vaccination, again, the highest percentage of people vaccinated are among the older people. In some parts of the municipalities of our capital city, over 65% or 75% of the older people have been vaccinated. If you have a look at the gerontology centers of homes for old people, where almost 100 of them are vaccinated. So they are also showing us their wish to learn, to study, to adapt. So it's not really, it's not just a saying when we say that they are showing through their example how we should behave. COVID has showed a lot of things. It has showed how sensitive we are in this 21st century of technology, innovations, and so on. It cannot help us when we face a new virus, where we are all the same. We are vulnerable, just like the people a few centuries ago were vulnerable to new viruses. So the contemporary technology does not help us a lot here. However, the elderly have shown that they're ready to learn in this context, having in mind the manner in which this disease can be prevented. We were forced to use online platforms, virtual platforms, where the older citizens in homes for old people, gerontology centers, they showed readiness to learn, to become a part of this virtual world, online world. And our ministry has managed to supply most modern technology equipment to the gerontology centers, smart televisions, tablets, phones that can enable people to communicate with their dear ones. I was skeptical at the beginning, but when I saw their enthusiasm to learn, to accept, to embrace the modern technology, was something really fascinating. And it really, they started communicating through these platforms very quickly in the gerontology centers. Of course, they are aware you cannot replace the physical contact, but they showed readiness to learn and to communicate with their loved ones. And this showed us that they are very much ready to accept various innovations, regardless of the fact that they are being in old age. As regards the Ministry of Labour, Employment, Culture and Social Affairs, we have adopted numerous laws and bylaws in order to implement various procedures aimed at improving lives of the elderly. Also, the ministry has initiated the process of drafting strategic documents, strategy for social protection, the strategy for the institution, and also the amendments to the law on social protection that should improve the position of the most vulnerable groups in our system. In the end of my speech today, I would like to add that the labor market is particularly rude and ruthless when it comes to older people. From the aspect of the labor market, an old person is a person over 50 years of age, and that's not good. And it has been noted. It was noted a few years ago, but it is becoming increasingly intensive. And due to all this, within the new strategy of employment for the period 2021-2026 and the accompanying action plan for the first 3 years, one of the particular goals will be improvement of the position of this vulnerable group, people who are over 50 years of age, because they also become, they are also a vulnerable group among other vulnerable groups like Roma, women, because really we are intensively working on the gender equality, and women still have less favorable position in the labor market. We must all work together on improving this situation. So having in mind, like many people have said here, that there are multiple reasons for discrimination. We have special target groups that have less favorable positions in the labor market, and our activities and goals of the new employment strategy are aimed at them because they will have priority. We will ensure various, and we already ensure various subventions for employment of people from this group. And in the end, I'd like to thank the Commissioner for the Protection of Equality, Madam Jankovic. I'd like to thank her for the recommendations related to the social protection. Our ministry will take them into consideration and we'll see them as the guidelines in the forthcoming period. Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I just say something? Yes, of course. As the Minister has mentioned, yes, this sentence or photograph in the beginning of the report seems threatening. That's right. Because young people particularly think that looks is the most important thing. But, you know, when you have a look at this picture, it's a work of one boy, drawing on one boy, who's 11 years old. And we are always organizing contests for children who send their literary works, drawings and pictures. And, you know, this boy is 11 years old and he could see the presence of discrimination. Thank you for the suggestions. I'd like to thank Madam Minister. I'd like to add that what we can see in the field, we as representatives of the citizens, is that at the labor market, people who are over the age of 50 are most active and the most capable workers in all, you know, fields, including the high-level education, so professors, and the people working in construction. So really thank you for taking special care of this group of people. Moreover, I'd like to invite Professor Dovanovic, State Secretary from the Ministry of Health, to tell us about his opinion on this issue today.
Thank you very much, my dear colleague. I'd like to bid welcome to greet Mrs. Commissioner and Mr. Pavcevic, all the guests and the representatives of media. It's my great pleasure to be invited on behalf of the Ministry of Health to participate in this panel. As all of us know, from birth till the end of life, the Ministry of Health is always present. Everything goes through us, and we turn to the Ministry concerning the health of the elderly population, and we cooperate very well with the Commissioner for Equality and its team. The Ministry of Health, with 360 institutions over the territory of Serbia, is present everywhere at local level, and with its large number of employees, doctors, medical assistants, nurses. We are daily in contact with the elderly people in Serbia. When I say contact, I mean by that we all know that as we are getting older, our parents, friends, there is a great increase of the need to see the doctor, to get medically checked and to get some service from the doctors and the medical institutions. And as Ministry of Health, we do our best to help the elderly and to meet their needs, as already mentioned. At the level of Serbia, we just do in a very organized way and make screenings across Serbia, in the whole Serbia. And if we know, we know that the elderly usually come to the medical checks, then they need to have only their ID cards and to get all the services. I'm coming from Niš, and I was born there, and I'm telling the most frequent practices from Niš. We also have home care from the doctors who come to see patients at home and take care. And we take complete care of those patients if you come to their home. You prove everything needed. Palliative health care is also present, and in all the institutions, health institutions in Serbia, and the elderly are usually those who most frequently use these services of palliative care. I used to be a professor and assistant in the beginning, and I just very well acquainted with that. And organizing the work of the palliative health care systems is something that is widespread, and we take care of patients who are seriously ill. And it's very important for the elderly population to know that they are not just alone and in the hands of destiny, but that somebody will take care of them. And then we introduced the electronic recipe way of using service. I mean, issuing recipe, which so you go to the doctor and then go to the pharmacy and take the medicine in that way. This is very good innovation. There are many new phenomena, actually, innovations, and you mentioned very interesting points in your special report, and I think that we will take care much more in our ministry to do better, provide better service for the elderly according to the recommendation you have given in your special report. So I'll mention also the pandemic COVID-19 and the mobility of the health care system. As soon as COVID pandemic started, all the elderly people and all the citizens being given all the necessary treatments and medicines, and we elderly and young who were got this contracted disease COVID-19 who were put on respirators, machines, breathing machines without discrimination. We did our best to help them in all this pandemic crisis, and is there finally burden you with all the in this part of panel, as Mr. Bacevac already said. I think that all the recommendations given in the special report are really excellent, and that were full of good content, and actually we are ready to deepen our intersectorial cooperation of all the stakeholders mentioned here, because getting older is the just expected path of our life. We are all going to get older, we have to create system in order to help them as much as we can, because we will need it very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Secretary of State Secretary, Ministry of Health, Zoran Radovanovic. Our healthcare system has demonstrated its flexibility. Our doctors, medical doctors, are given their maximum efforts. All of us are aware of that. This discussion and openness demonstrated today, and readiness to hear criticism and intersectoral cooperation reflects our desire to improve our healthcare system. The State Secretary in the Ministry of Family Care and Demography is here among us. We know that the problem of demography, we know that 35,000 people are dying annually. This is really something threatening. Now I'll give the floor the esteemed Madam Milka Milovanovic Minic the floor. Thank you very much, esteemed MPs, Commissioner Jankovic, Madam Kisic-Tepavčević, colleagues, guests, media representatives. I'm going to address you on behalf of the Ministry of Family Care and Demography. I like to convey the greetings from our Minister Ratko Mitrovic, who has fallen ill and who is fighting with the COVID-19, and therefore he's not present here, but he wanted me to convey his wishes for the work. It's very important of the Ministry for Family Care and Demography. And I'm glad that this topic is discussed here in this supreme place, National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia. It's very important that we have such a comprehensive document such as this special report, which would be sort of guide, and all the ministries should refer to it in order to pass adequate laws and acts. Application of the relevant measures are measured for years. We should comply to the recommendations issued by the Commissioner. We as a ministry will do our best to fulfill them. Ministry for Family Care and Demography is a new one. It's instituted as a strategic one and is dealing with demography. That the change of demographic image of Serbia is something very noticeable. Our ministry, in order to see the real situation, has made a plan of visiting the local self-administration in Serbia, and it's really needed to have a specific needs in all local communities in direct contact with people and see the possibilities to improve the demographic opportunities. As a strategic ministry, we want to give our strong support to Serbia path in 2030, which is doing its best to give support to the family, to find work for young people, to enable them give birth to kids. And we saw that people in local self-government have a wish and initiatives in order to change and improve the demographic image of Serbia, but also the demographic image of its own community. We saw the good practice examples that should be affirmed in order to be also used in other communities. What we saw and on ground, we are going to publish in a document that will be issued and presented to the government of Serbia in order to give our contribution to change the situation. And we expect that this document will be followed by adequate implementation. We are talking about the problems of the elderly and the problems they are facing in the third age, and concerning their abilities, they can give their contribution to the development of this society. And we, by multi-sectoral approach, we can improve their life in the third age. We should enable them to have dignity in their old age. I'll give you some data which speak best with the extension of the problems, and I'm sorry if I repeat some of the data already given. Republic of Serbia in the 21st century, according to all criteria, is in the group of the most of the eldest countries, with a perspective of further increase of the elder population, and part of those who are over 65, it's 22.1. Beginning of this year, every seventh citizen was younger than 15 years of age, and every fifth citizen was over 65. The average age is in Serbia is 43 years. So the increase of older population is really present, and the less of younger people. So it brings to multiplying the problems and the needs that we have changed with aging. The given numbers are not really encouraging, and having the birth growth lower. 160,000 babies were born 10 years ago. Now we've got 65,000 babies born. So we have 35,000 people less yearly, which is the size of a town like Shabac. We've got a larger number of those who died and those who were born or who were married. We've got much more divorces and less social contact. And having in mind the present demographic structure of Serbia and wanting to have better demographic future, it would be better to have 2 or 3, 4 kids in families in Serbia. So our ministry has proposed the law to introduce some financial assistance to families with kids, and we cooperate with the UNICEF and other institutions. So we introduced some support programs to parents in cooperation with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Labor, and with the UNFPA. We will give our contribution, and we will take part in implementation of Madrid International Action Plan for Elderly. We will also give assistance to program parentship through play, and we think that the care of health is really necessary for the first steps for the family care. And it's of key importance to raise awareness of these problems and find solutions, to raise awareness and the necessity of intergenerational dialogue, and try to promote these values. Intersectorial approach is really needed, valuable, and really precious. And in that way, our society will be much more ready to accept the challenges of the future.
Thank you, Madam State Secretary in the Ministry of the Care for Family and Demography. And I'd like to give the floor to Mr. John Kennedy Mossotti, UNFPA Country Director for Serbia. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for giving me the floor, and I appreciate the great debate that we are having here today. Particularly glad to listen to the wonderful engagement, and I'm happy to be part of the panel where we're talking about sectoral approaches that we could be able to advance the dignity and well-being of older persons. But you know, we've been speaking about them, and sometimes we seem to be talking about people who are not even in this room. You know, them is the older people, and according to Minister Daria, we are probably them. So we are talking about us. And if we are talking about us, what we are talking about is what we need to do for ourselves. Now, in my culture, there is one thing where we've said we should never do, is that you go ahead and construct a road, and then do you know what you do? You start putting nails and water and then you fall down. If this is a path for everyone, if this is our path, this is where we're headed, then let us stop putting nails and holes and soapy water for us to be able to fall down. So I was just explaining that because we seem to be thinking that we're talking about a category, a population category that is outside of this world. And it is very unfortunate that we had to take a pandemic like COVID for us to raise this issue at the level that where we're now having this discussion, because of the horrible things that happened to older persons, especially in the last year and even now. So I really want to thank the minister and all the ministers who are here, because they've done a fantastic job in talking about the different aspects that they are able to undertake within ministries to advance the dignity and well-being of older people. And I want to thank Commissioner Brankitsa with her team for this wonderful report. So let me take, I will do a very abbreviated portion of my statement, because I know that you're also tired. I do not want you to leave the room before we finish. So I'm going to talk about 4 things, and very quickly we're going to talk about them, because we are talking about sectoral collaboration or cooperation. We're going to talk about the thematic issues. Definitely we're going to talk about the collaboration itself amongst the different sectors. We talk about the partnerships that we need to create with those of us within government, as well as outside government, civil society, and other partners. We also need to talk about coherence and coordination. We cannot do different things in different places without having a look at the whole. So the different parts we are doing have to be more than the sum of its total, and that is what we're talking about. So I say that it is a great pleasure for me to contribute to the discussion and the importance of this subject that we're talking about right now. And I really want to laud the cooperation between the Commissioner for Equality as well as the National Assembly. The significance of this should not be downplayed, and the fact that we are talking about older people at this time and stage really shows how serious the government, as well as the National Assembly in particular, takes on this particular issue. So I'm very pleased to be here with you. And as this is a path that a lot of European nations are going through as well, the proportion of older people going up. So at the end of the day, as I said earlier at the beginning, we're doing this for ourselves. And I want to make the best case scenario for myself when I get to the age of, the minister is not here, but at that age that they mentioned about. So the vision, the creativity, the efforts that we need to put to ensure that we are doing the thing that is good for our older people is key. I'll very quickly go into some of the priorities that we've spoken about. So we know that the energies of older persons go down. Now, that is when they need that support. That is when they need everything that they need to be able to live in dignity. Older people are whole people. They are just like you and I. So every single ministry really has a part to play in advancing the rights and dignities of older people. So when we're talking about collaboration, and this report is amazing, really superb, Commissioner. It's really, and I'm going to identify just 4 recommendations because I know it's very comprehensive. But if you're going to talk about intersectoral collaboration, then we have to look at what each ministry contributes to making sure that the lives of older persons is much more dignified. And you know, I want specifically to quote something that is in your report. Population aging is the only secure future for all of us. The intergenerational solidarity is a fundamental agreement between all members of society. I promise you, Brankitsa, that I will keep quoting it in future. That, and obviously I'll give credit to you. Sometimes if I forget, don't think I'll definitely keep that in mind. But what it shows us is that, number one, we have to confirm and acknowledge that demographic aging is a reality and that it is not being seen as a problem or a challenge. And I have a nice anecdote here. Honestly, the way we treat older people sometimes, and this is, we're not talking from the rights perspective. You know, when you look at the parents, those are the people who raised you, the dignified people. You're the best that has come out of these parents, the parents. Look at the doctors who are treating patients. They are the 65 and older, some of them have done. The engineers who built this building, they are 65. Why would we want to leave them aside with all that knowledge, with all that resource and experience that they have? You know, it's akin, and I'm sorry I'm bringing some financial items to this. It's like taking so much dinner and just throwing it into the ocean. Why would we do that? We are rational human beings. We need to harness that important information that they have, the knowledge, the skills, the experience, the wisdom that you cannot quantify, and take it and utilize it for ourselves. So therefore, we would encourage the intergenerational dialogue. UNFPA encourages that, and I know all of us do. And we are going to speak not only with the government, and we have been having these engagements, and I really appreciate the Minister for Demography. Unfortunately, he's not here, but please convey our quick, get well quick wishes. Zoran, thank you so much for the wonderful work that you've done. But we should never throw away the resource, a very important resource that we can get for almost free without paying, and then just decide that we're going to do. So the evidence shows that whoever has engaged older persons is actually much better, and that would create a much better path for us. So I will quickly just go down. My resident coordinator has just left because she had another engagement. But at the UN side, we are leading together with other agencies, WHO, UNECE, Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as HelpAge International, where hopefully we're also going to have a mission here, because Serbia is seen as a best case example, which we are going to utilize for the entire Europe and Central Asia region. And I think that is an acknowledgement of how important and the wonderful work that you're doing. So the excellent collaboration that we have with the, with the Commissioner, but as well as the Ministry of Family Welfare and Demography, the Minority Rights and Social Dialogue, we truly hope that we'll be able to work together. And we know that in the next few days and weeks, we're going to launch the global report on ageism. There is a difference between aging and ageism. And please, if you want to know the difference, please be present there as well, because you'll also have our leaders in government as well as civil society and other partners talking about it. So let me conclude by highlighting some very inspiring recommendations from this report, and which we need to be able to address. Number one, we need to continue revising our understanding of aging. We fight ageism, and now you get the difference, and all types of discrimination against older people. Commissioner spoke eloquently about this. We need to continue promoting healthy aging and ensure that older persons' productivity and wisdom is capitalized, harnessed, and utilized by ourselves. The issue of dignity is important, and it is about human life. They are whole human beings, and we need to engage them as well. And thirdly, we need to continue advocating for intergenerational exchange to maximize every person's contribution to the overall development. We need to utilize this knowledge that we've spoken about. We need to use the wisdom. We need to harness it. And lastly, we need to promote digital literacy, because it has to be this is where we are right now, and this is where we are headed. I always speak to my friend Rada Juricin, whom she was going yesterday, and I said, look, if you're not going to be in Parliament, then certainly you're letting older people do. And then she said, no, certainly we're going to be with you. But she's done wonderful work working with older people on issues of digitalization, and we want to be able to promote that. So we are hopeful that all this and many other good recommendations from the Great Report will inspire a comprehensive policy document on aging, and will bring adjustments to the many policy documents, whether it is social, health, human rights, education, and everything else that we need to do. So UNFPA would remain our partners. You heard the regional director speak. We are going to work with you. We are going to walk with you. We are going to be a trusted partner, and we'll definitely make sure that older persons are whole and their dignity and well-being is respected. I really thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for your honest and, I think, very useful opinion and advice.
Having in mind that we have, you know, in delay when it comes to the time for this panel, if someone wants to say something, you can say it shortly, but if not, I believe we should continue. And then after you hear more speakers, you will have more, you know, wish to say something, to add something. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bacevac, for moderating this panel. I'd like to thank all the other panelists. Thank you once again for your understanding. I'd like to thank all the ministers. Thank you for acknowledging the recommendations and accepting the recommendations. Hopefully you will follow up on them and introduce them into the policies, mainstream them, and it will lead to a better quality life. Before the second panel, we'll hear a short video message of Ms. Peggy Hicks from the Human Rights, Peggy Hicks, sorry, from the UN Director of the Thematic Engagement. She's from the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Honorable Mr. Dacic, President of the National Assembly, Commissioner Yankovic, Excellencies, colleagues. It's an honor for me to address from the UN's Human Rights Office today's launch of the special report of the Commissioner for the Protection of Equality on the discrimination against older people in the Republic of Serbia. The devastation and suffering brought by the COVID-19 pandemic has touched everyone in our societies, but older people have suffered the most. We see this most disturbingly in the lives of people living in closed long-term care institutions, which were stripped to the bare minimum without freedom of movement or exchange with the outside world. I applaud the Commissioner's work to intensify monitoring equality protection during the pandemic and to make concrete proposals to the authorities to protect the rights of older persons. It is essential that vigorous and comprehensive monitoring of the rights of older persons continues across communities and in social care institutions. The Commissioner's report is incredibly valuable and timely. By providing the most up-to-date data and evidence on the state of discrimination and inequality regarding older people, it sheds much-needed light on the scope of the challenges and provides crucial guidance on how to address them. At the same time, the report also recognizes the heterogeneity of older people and highlights that an aging population presents important opportunities as well as challenges. It is encouraging to see that Serbia is determined to use this opportunity to address structural causes of inequality and to invest in a human rights-based approach that will help build a strong, sustainable, resilient society in which the rights and dignity of all people, of all ages, are respected and protected. We look forward to further strengthening our collaboration with the government, both at the national and local levels, and with civil society and national human rights institutions. By joining forces, we can facilitate a rights-based response to COVID-19 that upholds the rights and dignity of older persons everywhere. Together with our UN partners, we stand ready to support your efforts. Thank you.
Following this video message, we will begin immediately with the second panel. This is no less important and significant than the rest. I'll dare say ministers and the speaker will hear that in the end, we from the state institutions have the obligations to deal with the task within our competence, and it's also necessary to say thank you. All of my previous panelists had an obligation to do so. When talking about NGOs, they don't have that obligation. They just choose what task to perform. They can choose for themselves the topics they will deal with. And here the competition is never present. There were never serious people who were devoted to the issue of old people. Some topics are much more popular. Some issues are not so popular, but getting old and aging brings many challenges and many difficulties at the personal and social level. And to be honest, the most important that we have really those who are truly dedicated with these to these tasks, to these issues. They are dealing with that for many years, and great gratitude and appreciation I just want to extend to Mrs. Slavica Đukić-Janović, who is now in the capacity of the special advisor to the Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia. She used to deal with the demographic issues, but she was always committed, dedicated to her tasks, using all her knowledge, all her experience she had gained throughout her career and life. She's a psychiatry specialist, and that perhaps facilitated, and sometimes it made it difficult to deal with these issues thoroughly, and because this touches on this topic as well, and I'm very glad that she will be with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Savic. Thank you very much, Mrs. Todorovic from the Red Cross Serbia, and Andrea Savic. Also, Mrs. Nadezhda Sataric, who is one of the truly dedicated fighters for the rights of the elderly population. I'm so glad that you are with us, and also Uroš Savić-Kajin, I extend my greetings and appreciation and gratitude for your participation. It's very good to have young people who represent their group and send a meaningful message to this event. Now I give the floor to Slavica Đukić-Janović. Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner for Equality Protection, Ms. Janković. Thank you very much, and thank you and your assistance that you have encouraged us, us who are doing for years now on the issues that have been not resolved, but we are addressing them concerning older population. I'm very glad that in the Supreme House of Parliament we are dealing with this issue of the elderly. It's my special pleasure to be on this panel. I had the opportunity to choose which panel I'll participate in. It was my own choice, to be honest, and the knowledge and experience in the civil sector, in the area of the protection of older people with the use of information technologies, and together with the skills and knowledge of young people is very important, in my opinion, especially because I'm just dealing with the implementation of the agenda, UN agenda of SDGs 2030, allow me to just express my view on the special report on aging issued by the Office and the Commissioner for the Protection of Equality. This old age is the relative notion. We've got decades-old tradition of dealing with the problems of the old people. The extension of life is not just the achievement of science, but is a task to improve the position of all the people who are getting older, to encourage the partnership and engagement of partners of civil and all the sectors in order to achieve this goal. I think that this event will be of great use, benefit for all these who are dealing with the improvement of the life of the old people, because having good quality life in each part of our life is important, especially in the old age. Each from the social standpoint, this is really important. We have passed the Agenda 2030, which is the universal call to fight with the poverty and enable all the people to live in peace, prosperity, taking care of the sensitive categories, vulnerable groups, where the older citizens belong, elderly belong. The document agenda itself consists of 4 parts.
Sredstava implementacije, obnavljanja i globalnog partnerstva kao posebnog odeljka i 4. je izveštavanje i praćenje. I grubo gledano, mi danas zapravo dajemo upravo na ovaj način doprinos ovoj 4. komponenti Agende 2030. Agenda 2030 i ciljevi održivog razvoja usmereni su da pre svega konkretno pomognu običnom čoveku da živi bolje i kvalitetnije i da nikoga ne ostavi iza kolone u skladu sa motom Leave no one behind, dakle da niko ne izostane. Osnovna razlika u odnosu na nama dobro poznate milenijumske ciljeve je što je Agenda 2030 predvidela da to nije zadatak vlada 193 država članica Ujedinjenih nacija, već da su vlade pri implementaciji agende u obavezi da organe svih vlasti na lokalu, zatim sva civilna društva, sve medije, akademsku zajednicu, partnere iz privrede, iz međunarodnih organizacija okupe kako bismo radili na implementaciji svakog od 169 podciljeva, odnosno onoliko koliko su bitni i u kom broju su bitni za našu državu. Agenda 2030 je razvojna šansa koja nam se pruža da uradimo veliko delo za našu planetu, za dobrobit svih nas, a posebno generacija koje dolaze, i sigurno je da tamo gde dominira mladost u strukturi i u demografskoj slici države je sam prioritet rada na agendi drugačiji nego li u društvima kao što je Srbija gde dominiraju starije osobe. Podsjetila bih da u septembru 19. godine sekretar Ujedinjenih nacija pozvao sve sektore društva da se mobilišemo u dekadi akcija do 2030. jer trenutni napori za rešavanje globalnih problema poput siromaštva, klimatskih promena, nejednakosti, ugroženih grupa kojima treba podrška i pomoć su i tekako značajni. On je zapravo ovaj poziv usmerio i strukturirao 3 vrste akcija: globalnu, lokalnu akciju i akciju ljudi. Ova globalna kako bi se upotpunije upravljalo procesom dostizanja svih ciljeva, ali ova lokalna akcija uključuje zapravo ciljeve održivog razvoja u lokalna planska dokumenta, budžete, institucije i regulatornu legislativu na nivou države, a vlast na nivou gradova i opština kao najdominantniju i najodgovorniju za sva ona okupljanja civilnog i svih ostalih društava o kojima sam već nešto rekla. I naravno akcija ljudi koju sprovode i mladi i nevladin sektor i mediji i privatnici i privredni sektor, sindikati, akademske zajednice, dakle svaki pojedinac. Kada je u pitanju unapređenje položaja stanovnika trećeg doba, još uvek se suočavamo sa time da se starenje ipak smatra kao...
Still face the situation that getting older is considered a problem. And the society is overseeing this situation, just overlooking this problem. Information of the elderly about their rights and about the normative framework concerning their activities that can cover and predict their life. They can themselves give their inputs and just improve the legislative. Allow me now to remind you that before the 15th May is a day of the devoted to family, let us just send a message to children of different age. If you are away from your parents, if you haven't heard them soon, just call them. Parents, call your children, stay in touch with your kids. Let us have conversations, talks, and walks be as means of retaining the healthy family life, including all generations. Thank you very much. Let us ask the first panelist, Mr. Andrija Savić, the president of the Third Age Movement, who is the chair of the Pensioners' Council of Serbia, who is renowned, very much acquainted with 1,700,000 pensioners, who has always demonstrated much interest in their complete status in society and the state of their health and social needs. And I'm very glad that he's much interested in their mental state and caring about the mental health and resilience of people is very important. Mr. Savić, please take the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to express my appreciation for your inviting me to participate in this event. And I think that all the efforts made in the last few years by the Commissioner of Equality Protection deserve our attention, and her efforts have all the support of the Third Age Movement. And I'd like to express my own belief that our participation in this meeting is the first step in establishing a new strategic partnership in fulfilling the task of mutual interest. When the special report is case, I'd like to conclude that I'm very much satisfied with it, and that this report has been developed according to accordance with scientific methodology, and it has a great significance. It has a great applicative meaning and significance. It has a lot of argumentation that can be used in political decisions making concerning this issue that is the subject of this meeting the discrimination of the elderly and actually the aging issue. Here I represent the third age movement, but I have to tell that this movement is only one branch of the Republic organization of the pensioners organization of Serbia. This is the largest organization. It has 170 organizations at the level of Republic and the provinces, and it has 650,000 members. I'll give you the short overview of the work and our perception as a third age movement concerning the realization of the tasks we perform and how we see the situation in this realm, and what is our attitude and approach, not just concerning the results of the survey, but concerning the recommendations and conclusions of this report. I'd like to say that although the census of population and from the pandemic regions have been shifted to next year, our estimations are that in this country, beside 1,070,000 retired people, there is about 230,000 of the elderly people over 60 years of age who are not having the pensioner status. So the overall number is very near to 2 million of citizens, which in comparison to 7 million of population is a really significant social group and perhaps the most numerous group. The impression we have that this group is marginalized more or less and going to the opinion that it is just burden for the society and really the beneficiary of financial spending. All that is just present. We are aware of that, but all the efforts made in intersectorial cooperation between the holders of politics in exercise the activities touching upon elderly have brought results. We want to participate in this process, and because we are on the same task, and we do whatever we are able to in order to change, to improve the position of the elderly concerning its quality. The role of the civil sector, according to the good practice in democracies, is very important, not just a corrective factor, but as an important partner in creating the public policies which should provide equal treatment of the elderly concerning their exercise of all rights and using the services and in overall social life, and most of all using the healthcare services. I'd like to stick to these recommendations given, and I'd like to quote some of the highlights concerning our participation and involvement in all these activities that on the state national level that have been undertaken. And for instance, when the third age movement is concerned, for 15 years now we exist as an organization, and it implements with the assistance of the state and under the aegis of the president of the state. For 15 years we have been organizing the Olympic Games have this latent age discrimination brought to the socially acceptable level. And we think that our brand is the most important content of our activity, is on its good way, and that it's adjusted, fits into the accepted policies, and we will do our best to strengthen it both in the quantitative and quality way. Concerning the recommendations and conclusions of this report, I'll point out a few aspects. How to improve the financial security of the elderly. So, the issue of indicators of the risks of poverty, economic, social security is very important. If you look into the statistical indicators that are published, issued recently, we can see from them that actually the state of Serbia is an old state. Almost 170,000 people, and the average pension amounts to the money that is lower than the money necessary to to put all the goods necessary for the life of a person. After the 2000, we had many reforms, and all that was just on the surface, cosmetic sort of activities. But we needed a deep reform, strategic one. And in that way, many issues should be resolved easier. And this just touches upon the set of issues we heard about previously concerning the social policy, in order to protect the most endangered age group. As an illustration, I'd like to give you the attempt to use Swiss formula in order to adjust pensions. It is adjustment of pensions in relation to the rise of incomes. It was just in use for 1 year, but according to our estimations and following the state on the ground, we saw that it was not strictly obeyed and honored, and it was not, pensions did not follow the amount of money earned by people who were employed at the moment. So this is the indicator concerning the parameters pertaining the financial position of the pensioners. So here there is also an issue of social pensions, and this is an issue relating to the group of 230,000 people over 65 years of age, and this topic deserves our attention, really, and it should be the priority to be reserved by the policy makers. Concerning the institutional framework, we had some initiatives concerning developing the aging strategy and good ways of living of the elderly, and this should also be put on the list of priority list. And concerning the up to now functioning of the Council for Aging that exists as an expert advisory body since 2017, it seems to me that we had greater participation and role of that council, and we need that it would have a greater level, concerning in comparison with other national councils. So I would not much to speak much more, because this is a broad issues. There are many issues actually within that deserve organizing round tables, and I think that by providing this thesis, I gave our contribution. Thank you very much, Mr. Savic. I have missed to say that all of us who are sitting here, we should greet Mr. Mossotti, who demonstrates great understanding together with his assistants concerning the practical work on the ground in Serbia. And it's my great pleasure to announce Mrs. Natasha Todorovic from the Red Cross of Serbia, and also she is the Vice President of the Gerontologists Society of Serbia.
To welcome Ms. Natasha Sataric, Amnesty Network of Humanist Organizations, who is a member of the Council for Agenda 2030, and also to welcome representatives of the NGOs dealing with elderly people. There are some publications that Ms. Sataric has made, Ms. Todorovic, sorry, has made, and numerous publications, but during her speech we'll hear about the activities implemented in this field. Thank you, Professor, for such a kindly presentation of myself. What I'm going to tell you today is that in this panel we have three important factors of development: aging, NGO organizations, and Sustainable Development Goals. These are very important three factors of development. I'm not going to speak about aging as a problem. I'm going to speak about the problems that the older persons are facing, and about the role of the civil society, including the Red Cross of Serbia, in this, because I participate in various organizations and I can talk to you from different aspects. It is, of course, certain that the aging of population affect various sectors of society: labor market, implementation of policies, demand for goods and services, urban planning, development of infrastructure, etc. On the other hand, it affects the structure of the family and intergenerational relations. And during the pandemic of the COVID-19, we have witnessed that it's very important. Actually, the COVID was a magnifying glass through which we could see better how our interventions have been good, or we could see what were the shortcomings when it comes to our approach to the human rights of the elderly. Aging is a topic that has several various goals. It is related to the reduction of poverty, eradication of poverty, gender equality, economic growth, dignity, work, reduction of inequality, and sustainable cities. And achieving goals is not possible without NGOs and civil society organizations, as without the elderly people themselves. The 2030 agenda emphasizes 5 main roles of the civil society. The first role is to promote and increase awareness and inform and advocate the changes within the Agenda 2030. Changing the image of the elderly people as passive receivers of assistance in a society and turning them into development factors will contribute to the creating an image of elderly people who contribute to the family and the community. This approach to the work of civil society organizations through their campaigns and various activities during COVID-19 was an example of good practice. Thousands of people volunteered helping elderly people. They were, the link between those elderly people who could not leave their houses, and volunteers were also elderly people. What's also important to show is that social inclusion means to give older persons a possibility to use their knowledge and experience. On the other hand, COVID has shown that there is a wide spectrum of ageism, from, you know, some bad jokes on social networks to the very bad attitude and treatment of elderly people. This is something where civil sector can contribute and emphasize and identify the problems. Another contribution of civil sector is to ensure the voice of the poorest elderly people is heard. I'm here including elderly Roma people, illiterate older people in the village, older people living in institutions. You know, leaving no one behind principle requires global development to have a positive effect on those groups that are at special risk of poverty or other challenges. Goal number 1 is using the poverty is eradication of the poverty, is something that was dealt by civil sector. We dealt with the social pensions. We could see that 200,000 of older people do not have pensions, and this was, you know, put on the discussion in the society. Goal number 2 is to eradicate hunger. There are 35,300 persons using the so-called national people's kitchens. There are many people hungry in the rural areas. We need to take care of the equal development of different regions. Goal number 3 is good health and well-being, taking into consideration health needs of elderly people, of increasing number of older people. This is why we are advocating adoption of the strategy on long-term care. This is something that can enable better health for the whole life cycle of people. Civil society organizations are implementing activities envisaged by the WHO within the decade of healthy aging and healthy lifestyle, which is actually, and this is something that the Red Cross is working on. Another important thing is, and goal number 4, that's lifelong learning and lifelong education that will enable the elderly to have access to education. And for those older workers, they will have a chance for requalifications. Also, another thing is advocating implementation of Agenda 2030 and SDGs. We as a civil sector and Red Cross are very happy because we have managed to change the language. We are not calling about old people. We are not calling them the elderly, but older persons. Our older volunteer person spoke twice about this in the United Nations. And as the Commissioner has mentioned many of these things, I'm not going to repeat, but it's important to emphasize the partnership and goal number 17. The 4th contribution of the civil sector is the services provided by civil sectors. They are providing specialized, innovative services, and very often they provide services in those parts of the country which are hard to reach, particularly older people. And this is exactly this important contribution and complementarity with they're complementary with the services provided by the state. And another important contribution of civil sector is gathering information and monitoring the implementation of Agenda 2030. Civil society sector can be an important link when it comes to gathering information and measuring results and monitoring whether the measures are implemented at different levels. Speaking from the point of view of someone who has been dealing with the aging issues for decades, I can say we have a lot of information today, in data, but still we do not have significant public policies. abuse based on ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and so on, are all, can be all applied to people that are over the age of 65. COVID has made us act digitally, and it has shown us that digital exclusion is a problem, and it is extension of inequality that is going on in the real world. Thank you, Madam Todorovic. I have to say, I'm sorry that after announcing the next panelist, I will have to leave this meeting due to the obligations I have arranged sooner. Professional, humane, and very active Madam Nadezhda Sataric has for 45 years been dedicated to older people. This indicates how well she is familiar with state institutions for which she worked for 25 years, and she's very much familiar with the impact of the civil sector when it comes to providing services to the most vulnerable groups of our citizens. Madam Sataric was announced one of the 15 champions of human rights from all the human rights who are members of UNESCO, when it was a celebration of 40 years since the adoption of the Universal Declaration. She is one of the women, according to UN Women, who have contributed to the development and protecting older people during COVID-19. At this panel today, she is representing Amity Network of Humanist Organizations. Thank you very much, Professor Kađukić-Dejanović. I'm now so much excited about this announcement of yours. I think I must not say anything else and say just I'm a happy woman today. You see how psychiatrists are acting and how they affect people. Thank you, Madam Dejanović. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, I'm not going to use my 4 minutes. I give up on everything I have written and prepared. I will just say some few words from my head, and it will last 2 or 3 minutes. 2 things I'd like to emphasize today. Thank you, Madam Brankica Jankovic. I'm very much excited that for the first time we have this report on discrimination, because we didn't have to do this report. We are, we have obligation to write reports for some conventions that we have ratified, but we do not have convention on the elderly, so this is fantastic. Results are great, recommendations are great. I support them all, and I'm very happy if any of this can be implemented and is implemented. As regards civil society and its contribution to the improvement of the quality of life, particularly to the members of the Humanist Organization Network members, I'm deeply convinced that during the pandemic we have provided contribution, let alone the contribution we provided even before the pandemic. Natasha has mentioned some of our contributions, but during the pandemic we have really provided a lot of contribution, particularly us who provide services. We shared humanitarian packages. We were the voice of the most vulnerable ones, and we, spoke to Brankica Jankovic, telling her, come on, please react. We must enable cousins and kinders to visit the older one in gerontology centers and so on, and she reacted. Having in mind that this panel is related to implementation of the Agenda 2030, let me turn your attention to 2 challenges faced by some of the groups of older people. Speaking about the groups of older persons, it's very important that someone noticed today it is a heterogeneous group. It's not a homogeneous group. So speaking about discrimination in general, we can speak and about violation of the rights. We can, pay attention to some groups of older people. And I'd like to emphasize life in poverty of some of those 150,000 older women who are older than 65 years of age, and of some of those 40,000 older men. They're not all in poverty, but some of them are very much living in poverty. And we, as the country, as a society, if we want to achieve goal number 1 of the SDG, that is eradication of poverty by 2030, then we must do something for this category of people. The second group of vulnerable people are household, in rural areas with older people living in them, living from, minimal pensions, about 12,000 dinars. During the pandemic, they were very much at threat. They could not sell their agricultural products, and the risk of poverty is very much higher with them. Key document for implementation of Strategy 2030 is the program of the reforms of the policy of employment. This program recognized the challenge related to the older people who have no income or not significant income, and it envisages financial assistance to the older persons who need assistance. We even drafted a law amending the law on social protection, where this was acknowledged, but it says that there is not significant funds in the budget. I'm asking competent institutions to find a way to assist some of those categories so that they do not live in poverty. That's one thing I wanted to say. And secondly, when it comes to agricultural pensions and pensions living in the risk of poverty, during the pandemic, we were working with women in rural areas, older and younger women, and we reached the conclusion that almost none of them pay contributions for the pension and disability fund. 500,000 of registered agricultural households, farms, and only 100,000 of them pay contributions for the pension and disability fund. And we know why they do not pay contributions. If they could find a way to pay contributions for this, that would be the way to ensure pensions for them in future, to ensure bigger pensions for them in the old age, because they cannot live on 12,000 dinars. The second thing I'd like to draw your attention to is support to informal caregivers of older people. That is the challenge of the lack of the daily social protection, social care services. We see that those elderly care about family a lot, and we as a society do not support informal caregivers. So these informal caregivers really need support. They are burdened by the unpaid labor, and they could not feel the advancements made in through achievement of Agenda 2030. Unpaid work is very crucial for taking care of older people, and this burden of unpaid work should be shared between the family, men and women family, and the society, and ensure its sustainable financing. That's very important, to finance those informal caregivers and its members of their families. And how many services are financed by the state? Services related to the household services, taking care of the houses. Only about 16,000 of services are supported by the state. They're very important because many older people cannot function on their own independently. Next year we'll have a census, and I propose that during the census we should identify older people who depend on the instrumental assistance or support of the others. So we need to plan not just as, help in the house, but we need to plan other innovative services to support their informal caregivers and to require the law on volunteer engagement. Only Red Cross volunteers, and the law is not stimulative in this issue. We should work more on this. Yes, one of the recommendation mentions this, but I couldn't mention it today. Yes, we need to map which are the services that are lacking. Thank you very much. In the end, we have a president of Youth Umbrella Organization who we expect to be basic pillar of the social life 2030. Mr. Uroš Savić-Kajin, who is the president of Youth Umbrella Organizations, who show interest in intergenerational solidarity and dialogue. It's very important to hear what a young person has to say about this report. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this event. Honorable representatives of international organizations and dear colleagues from civil sector. My name is Uroš Savić-Kajin. I represent Youth Umbrella Organization, and I'll mention it COMS later on. It's really difficult to abbreviate, just to make brief my speech. First of all, I'd like to thank Mrs. Commissioner and her team for dedicated work on this age discrimination. And this is a basis for the future work on the improvement of position of the elderly in this society. What is the common thing of the youth and the elderly? Everybody used to be young once, and each of us will reach the old age. Concerning our challenge is something that was mentioned many times during this event. If we take into account employment, young people are often discriminated because out of prejudices they regard as those unable to perform equally good some job, or the same goes with the old elder. This is the both similar sides, actually two sides of one coin. When COMS is filing reports yearly, in 2020 60 people were victims of, young people were victims of discrimination, so it just speaks about the need for action, and all of us and this organization can play its role. And first of all, we should establish the foundations for dialogue. If we speak about the cooperation between the youth and the elderly, it's necessary, first of all, to introduce dialogue. And COMS is doing on this issue for years, and it's doing its best to bridge this area and to enable decision makers to hear the voice of the young. So there is no reason not to be successful in this project, to introduce better synergy between the generations, young and the elderly. And engagements of the youth in civil sector shows that every fifth person was discriminated because it was included in the work of some organization, activism. But we should promote activism and solidarity, and in that way we can change the public opinion and introduce changes to the society. And if we promote this, then we will encourage young people to be much more active, to take part in activism. So we understand that it is necessary to just encourage young people and to be, of course, dedicated. Mr. Mossotti said that all the elderly have many skills, many capabilities that can be used in and help the young people in better performing their duties during COVID pandemic. We saw demonstrated good engagement of the youth. 25% of the young volunteered and organized themselves in order to help the elderly. We are doing now much to establish better environment for that. I'd like finally to say that and to invite all the stakeholders and international representatives to be included in this the dialogue between the generations in order to reach the goals, to achieve the goals of 2030 agenda. Thank you very much, Uroš. Now we've got two MPs who asked for floor. Before giving them the floor, I'm going to shortly give my appreciation to extend gratitude to all those who are following this event by internet, online, because we've got live streaming of the event. We have decided for the hybrid format. I made a great mistake not mentioning that at the beginning, and just said hello to all those who are following the proceedings of this public hearing. I want to inform you in advance that we have given up the conclusion part because due to my mistake, we were too over-tolerant and allowed the speakers to speak for too long. You have heard in the previous ministerial panel that everyone accepted the recommendations. We are going to forward those recommendations in the form of conclusions, and we are also have the deliberation on these reports concerning the procedures and rules of the Committee for Human and Minority Rights and Gender Equality. So following the panel that will be dedicated to the good practice examples, and Mrs. Borka Jeremic will chair that, and I ask them to stick to the time schedule. And thank you very much for those who follow us to the end. So there, Marina Raguš has applied for word. If she just advance ask for floor, and Vuk Mirčetić also wanted to take the floor. Thank you for staying to the end with us. So Elvira Kovač just wanted to stay to the end, but she had to give up because she had some other business to attend. I want to thank everybody and to the MPs who were dedicated to following the event.
Madam Rakuša, the floor is yours. Thank you. First of all, I really had a chance to find out a lot today. I'd like to greet Mr. Andrija Savić. I've met him before. I'm very glad that he is active now in the Third Age movement. And here behind me is Madam Dragana Dimić. She's a professor. I have, during this event, I have exchanged some thoughts with her, listened to her advice, and one good thing for all the members of younger generation is the example of good practice coming from Germany. Madam Dinic told me about this. You know, they have a senior body, a body of seniors who advise their government about the needs and about the most important, serious issues and challenges faced by the older people. So regardless of everything I've heard today, this, you know, gave me a framework for my small contribution today. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I think that the goal is to approach this issue in the matter that, you know, when we go to pension, we forget about, when someone goes to pension, we forget about those people, we marginalize them. But a lot has been done a lot in their lives and contributed to society a lot. I think that healthy society is the society that accepts the younger generation as well. And this is a chance for intergenerational dialogue. And as you can see, parliamentarians are carefully listening to you. I think that's necessary. We need concrete results. I hear about many projects about raising awareness. I know it's important, but I know that not many concrete results are achieved through these projects. And, you know, in the country where every 55th citizen is over the age of 65, so we need concrete results because our older citizens live in circumstances that are not good. They need all the possible assistance, just as Madam Professor Slavica Jokic said. The gathering is healthy, safe, and materially sustainable society. Another, by talking through Dr. Dinic, Professor Dinic, and I'll finish with this, we cannot only criticize our society. We can remember some times before in the history, in the old Yugoslavia, the different regime. And you know, here in front of me, I have several theses of the Gerontology Society of Serbia that was founded in 1973. Since that year, this society has gathered renowned people of our society. I've recognized my professor from the faculty, from university, Mr. Ivan Nedeljković, and other wise people who have made a lot of contribution in our society. Some of you we could hear today. For decades now, we have been dealing with this issue, trying to improve the quality of life of each individual in our society, regardless of the statistic. My recommendation for today, with all the praise for the, you know, report, I would sign it myself, but we'll meet in the plenary. This is a great step forward. But my recommendation is to include all the stakeholders and to put emphasis on the results. We are a small country. We have a lot of great people who have been marginalized this way or another. Of course, this is not homogeneous population, older population. The older population is heterogeneous, and let's do everything we can to improve the quality of their life. Regardless of all the statistics, the quality of individual life is much more important, because as statistics, as you know, Madam Commissioner, sometimes does not show very important things. But, you know, we as parliamentarians had the opportunity to hear about some problems we haven't been aware before. Hopefully we could have a national council or a working group or a team of people who would really successfully work on the issues and problems of the older generation, so that we parliamentarians don't have to wait for a long period of time wasted on raising awareness, implementing some projects, because you know these people, older people, need medical treatment, food. They need it today. So the door of the parliament is always open. My door of my office is always open, as you know. Hopefully we can cooperate on some concrete good practices so that each report contains abundance of good practices. Thank you once again, and I greet all the participants in today's panel. Thank you, Madam Member of Parliament. Thank you for insisting on focusing on the results. That is important for all of us. Thank you for the support as well, and for noticing that in the introductory speech I said that we are talking about the present today. Mr. Vuk Mircetic has a question, but I'd like the panelists to change their who are in the next panel, participating in the next panel, should come here, and we'll hear we'll have the next panel. But Mr. Nicetic, while we are doing this, you can ask a question while they're changing seats. I'm very glad when some younger generation of MPs stay with us till the end and ask for the floor. And it's encouraging for us. Thank you very much for following all the issues related to human rights. You are a member of the Committee on Culture, and thank you for the nice, kind words. Distinguished Madam Commissioner, distinguished representatives of the international institutions, of the public and civil sector, dear MPs, the distinguished citizens of the Republic of Serbia, all of you following this, I'd like to use this moment to address everyone as an MP. I'm here as a representative of the Committee on Constitutional Issues and Legislation. The institution of the Commission for Protection and Equality is very important for the citizens of the Republic of Serbia, having in mind that the issue of equality is the issue concerning all of us, and the issue of discrimination is a problem of all of us. So this time I'd like to praise the Commissioner for Protection of Equality, because every time you spoke about equality in the plenary, when we spoke about equality in the plenary, she was present. Not only was she present, but she sat during the whole session, and it is very difficult sometimes. She has always been present, listened to our questions. Some of the questions might have not been very, pleasant, but she answered all of them. The Republic of Serbia approaches all the issues strategically. Therefore, we need to approach the discrimination issue strategically. We cannot allow to deal with the discrimination issues only when we face discrimination. When you speak about ageism, discrimination of older people, is related to the older people. I'm not saying the elderly, but older people. But it refers to all of us. Who is relatively young, if you have a look at the youth law, I'm not young because I'm 32 years old, and the law says young people are up to 30. So I can say that I'm proud to see that here are some young people who are interested in this, and it is encouraging and indicating that in future we will all work towards tackling this issue, not only when we become the subject of discrimination, but much before. Having in mind that we are short of time, I have to say I don't mind. It's okay, because this is a very important issue related to all of us, and I support you. I will stay until the very end because I want to hear what the others have to say about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is a very strong message when it's coming from all of you MPs who remained with us. It's really important. Now I give the floor to our partners. Thank you very much, Brankica. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for staying to the last session. It's my great pleasure to be able to moderate this session, and I hope it will be over very soon, and that we will deal with interesting issues. As our distinguished speakers said before, and as mentioned in the report, promotion of the active and healthy aging is the part of the and promise for the better future of the society. Together with the Office of the Commission for the Protection of Equality, we designed a campaign called Equality Knows No Age, and it's aimed at the new promote a new approach to population aging in Serbia among various groups of stakeholders and create a friendly, enabling environment to healthy and active aging. Today's launching event is the first one in the series of activities that officially announces the beginning of the campaigns. You will note brochures with key advocacy messages aimed at facilitating the work of national and local level policymakers and members of the parliament promoting and implementing key recommendations from the report that was presented today. We are going to have a lot of media appearances, TV shows, messages for wider public in the country will be organized starting tomorrow. We are going to present 3 interesting good practice, and one of them I will present now, the cooperation with the Mixer Festival last year, and that we are going to continue this year. And there we had an opportunity to launch the topic of intergenerational cooperation. We made the tutorials with the Serbian actress Reda Đurićin, who were aimed to promote digital literacy among older persons in older generation in Serbia. So the peer-to-peer communication provided to be most efficient, and the Mixer Festival will be held by the end of this month, and we plan to continue this successful cooperation. Now I will announce the next good practice that will be presented by Demir Mektić by the Belgrade Center for Human Rights, and I'll talk about it later.
Microphone.
Microphone, please.
He hasn't turned on microphone.
I'm not good, just inexperienced in this. I'd like to extend my gratitude to Madam Commissioner for giving me, trusted me with presenting this project to you as an UNFPA. I'm coming from Belgrade Center for Human Rights, which has been active over 20 years in the realm of human rights, and in its focus are the persons of older age and, of course, the youth. I actually work for the youth projects of the Belgrade Center. And, of course, you wonder how we accepted to work on this intergenerational cooperation. When speaking about young people, we know that they live in a society, and you cannot atomize them and encircle them as separate. And we wanted to create a space when young and the older person can cooperate. And we are talking about a specific period, about the last year, first half of the last year, when we faced different phenomena concerning the state of emergency in the pandemic COVID-19. But our idea was to bring them together and to help the elderly, to give them packages of assistance, actually the competencies that will be of great importance for them during the challenging time of COVID-19. There was a workshop of media literacy, digital literacy, and stress management workshop. So some workshops were dedicated to cooperation, solidarity, and out of the work of such workshops, we had local activities undertaken, and I'll take another minute of your time. For instance, if you have Mileva at the local self-management, and you have Sara, another young girl, so they established mentorship. They together were engaged on making a news report actually on the state on the ground. So we have established projects concerning the intergenerational cooperation. Both sides are interested in partnership. And talking about the older person, we cannot speak about the stereotype vocational professions. We don't talk about knitting or needlework. We had many work to do with the activists, and we were talking about very serious matters. When we are talking about tolerance, I would like to have this term to be eradicated, because nobody should not tolerate others, but young and the old should cooperate, be responsible. We are responsible for building this society, for constructing a better future for this society. The togetherness in welfare. Thank you, Damir. I'll ask now Gordana Milovanovic to tell us how the culture can promote intergenerational cooperation. Good afternoon, esteemed Madam Commissioner. I bid welcome to all the participants in the conference and all the guests. I'll try to be brief and to speak fast because I'm the last speaker. Today we heard a lot about intergeneration cooperation, and this phenomenon of aging is very much present around the world, and intergeneration solidarity is necessary. But it is very difficult to describe thoroughly. It includes the cooperation between the members of the family, community, and between the states and internationally. So the solidarity, we should have a wider picture about it when talking about and take into consideration development of the digital world and flow of information. The solidarity notion is very wide. There are lots of prejudices about young or the older persons, but intergenerational solidarity is really needed. Every year, both groups, the old and the youth, can really contribute to the society, and which is of key importance for the democratic development of the society. HelpNet is a network which operates for 2 years, and it deals with the intergenerational solidarity within the Visegrad Fund. This year, we implement the project Strengthening Intergeneration Solidarities. From Serbia, we've got the partner Red Cross of Serbia. From Poland, European Group for Cooperation Tripia. Then we have the Center for Social Work from Slovakia, and one also partner from Czech Republic. Over 50 people, including children, young people, and adults from Czech, Slovak Republic, Poland, are trained to use smartphones, and they also instructed people how to make small, brief videos on how to use smartphones. So we have chosen one video called Strengthening Intergeneration Solidarity. But this video is actually 13 minutes long, but it can be found on YouTube, and it's one of the products of our project, and it's called it can be found also at the intergenerationcooperation.com. It also features this video. RS, I'd like you to see this video. So we would like that this site would be alive after the project is closed, and besides the blogs and reports and just about different activities, you can see the also text of our assistants and associates. I wish you to visit this site. So intergeneration solidarity .rs. Just demolition of stereotype is actually key to this activity, and also the digital literacy of the older people. This is very important. With that, our elders could be, via that they were able to communicate with their family during COVID pandemic. I just got messed up, and with all this speed, and so our activity just enables us to see that the elderly enable us to see the life from different perspective. Thank you, Gordana. We promise that we are going to continue improving these good practices and improve them. I'd like to ask Brankica to conclude. So, as I said, there will be no conclusion of this event, but we are going to send you them via email. You said that you heard that state secretaries have accepted these recommendations given in the reports. Civil society organization will have also comments and their recommendations to those recommendations, and those who have been acquainted with our work for the previous 5 years know that we are open for all the suggestions and comments, and we are going to forward all our conclusions to you after the event. It's not fair to take you another couple of minutes, but the greatest treasure of this event was to convene at one point, a place, the most important and competent from the government and all those interested in the issue. Of course, everyone who was present here just was speaking about his priorities. Thank you very much for staying with us till the end. Thank you very much, Madam and Mr. MP. It was very valuable for us. I just appreciate that greatly. Mr. Pavian is here, Ms. Dinic, Gerontologist Association of Serbia. I would not like to discriminate anyone who was not mentioned, but I appreciate your presence generally. Instead of conclusion, I'm aware that we are aware of our responsibility concerning the work in front of us, and I'm going to remind you of the Margaret Mead's thought. She's anthropologist, and I'm sorry that I didn't say that the links among generations are very important for mental stability and for the stability of the community, personal and broader, where the identity is built and where the common interests of the whole societies are effectuated, and when you test the tenacity and without which there is no social development. Finally, I wish you happy, merry Day of the Family tomorrow. We all tend to have family where we would like to live. As Demir would say, it is much more comfortable living together. Thank you for your attention. Join some cocktail. Thank you.